Stream is
We
live.
are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Happy Tuesday. I am Lawrence Winnerman. I'm joined by my friend Ann Kramer, and we are
Hi, Dan.
doing part two. Hi, Ann. How are you?
Oh, look, we got a little kitten back there. I'm doing
Oh,
fine. It's great to see you again, Lawrence.
it's great to see you too, Ann. For those who are just joining us, we are doing part two of Imagining a New Economy, the nuts and bolts of building an integrative economy. This work is really Anne's brainchild. It is the years and years of work that she has done thinking about and putting together a plan for an integrative economy. And, just in case there are folks here who haven't met you yet, would you like to introduce yourself to the crowd?
Yeah. So, welcome everybody. My name's Ann Kramer, and Lawrence and I met each other through Substack, writing some curious things about the economy and that type of thing. But my background is, for 30 plus years is as a counselor. And I've worked one on one with folks and couples, working to really help them build whole and dynamic lives. And we're going to look a little bit about that today, because one of the reasons that I do what I do is that so many of my clients in the early years would come in and basically say to me, I'm doing what I thought I was supposed to do. I grew up, I got a good college degree, or I got a good job, I got a spouse, a house, the cars, the kids, stuff, and I'm supposed to be happily ever after now. And I'm not. I'm miserable. What's wrong with me? And my answer to that initially was, yeah, what is wrong with you? But little by little by little, had to recognize that I don't think there was so much wrong with so many people as it was the story they were trying to jam their lives into was not really going to satisfy them. And it's a product too, in some ways, Lawrence, of our success, that over the last several hundred years, as our economies changed and we became able to learn more and thrive, our quest for what our lives were really began to change. And we wanted to have those happily ever afters, but we were still attached to the belief that the money we made and the stuff that we bought was going to do that for us. And what my clients were saying is, there's something missing here. What's wrong? And so I started working with them to really develop a wholeness model that would give them the opportunity to see a broader light. And that's what's led me to also impact and work with the economy stuff, because we are heading for another change. Somehow or another, we're going to be changing our economy, and
Right.
people need to know how to respond to that.
And one of the things I love about this, Anne, is your thesis is essentially that broken people build broken economies or broken
Yes,
systems, and whole people build whole systems, including
right.
whole economies. And so the reason that we are on session two, kind of jumping to something that looks like a tangent but isn't, is because this is sort of your theory of the case that to
Yeah.
build a functioning economy, we really need to understand what living a whole and fulfilling life as individuals would
Exactly.
look like.
Exactly. And we're at that stage where we can do this. This is not 1930, right? This is 2026, and we have the capacity to do this. And everything that's changing behind us is just encouraging us to do that. And so, one of the things that, maybe we should bring up the wholeness continuum. So guys, in this session, I'm really going to do what I oftentimes do with my clients, is kind of challenge them to think about the lives that they learned to develop or not develop, and challenge them to say there's a new story that we need to start creating. So
Yeah.
one of the things that one of the tools that I developed long ago was the wholeness continuum. And if you'll bring that up, Lawrence, I think we can start with that. This wholeness continuum really was what I had to say to my clients, that we grow up in a culture, if you look at this, that at 5 is what we all thought we were supposed to achieve. 5 is basically that status quo that we all grew up with. We'd be consumers, we get the house, the cars, the kids, the stuff. 5 was health taken for granted. Most of us were just barely, we would do enough to get by, but as long as we weren't sick, we kind of considered ourselves healthy. Most of us were doing that kind of rat race life: get up, go to work, do the job, come home, feed the kids, put them in bed, get up the next day and do it again and again and again and again. And so our lives at 5 were kind of on this autopilot. And my clients were coming into me basically somewhere in the 0 to 4 level saying, I was at 5, but now I'm not. I'm at that 1, 2, 3 level with problems and just trying to get through. And for most of my clients coming in, they were very reactive in their lives. Something wasn't working. They couldn't figure out what, but they just wanted to get rid of whatever it was that was irritating. Did they have depression, anxiety? Were they in the midst of a divorce and their marriage was crumbling? Were they filing for bankruptcy? On that 0 to 5 level, we tend to be kind of reactive to the world going around, doing enough to get by, and crisis driven. But my clients were kind of coming into me saying, could you get me back to 5, Anne? Because now, I'm in this 1, 2, 3 level and life is awful. Get me back to 5. I mean, they weren't saying it that way, but that's
Right.
essentially what they were saying. Come back. Let me get back to normal. And I
And
would say to them, oh,
I'm
yeah,
so
Lawrence,
sorry to interrupt. So I just want to
I've
acknowledge
lost
that.
you.
Oh, am I not
I'm
here? Can you hear
losing.
me now? Oh no. Oh no.
Okay, are we back? I think we're back.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I just
It
wanted to
happens.
say I'm on cheap hotel Wi-Fi, so my
Oh, okay.
apologies. I just wanted to point out it is really hard to read. I want folks to know that we acknowledge that you may not be able to read this on your phone screen
Oh,
at the
okay.
moment.
Oh,
Anne's going
yeah.
to explain sort of what each number and each level is, and also we will post this in the recap. So, and
Yes.
just so you know, most people aren't able to read what each number says.
Okay. So, well, then let me go back. At the 0 to 1 level, it's really an intensive wait till it's broke, then fix it. That we're overwhelmed by life's problems and often feel hopeless. Most of my clients don't come in then. They come more in the 2, 3 level where they have some problems that they feel controlled by, and they just want them to get managed or disappear, that type of thing. They're smaller things. They're not in uber crisis type of thing. And for a lot of people, that 2, 3, 4 level is that constant anxiety and stress that Americans live in.
Mhm.
We're constantly under pressure in our lives and we just want it to go away. And clients would come in and say, help me, get rid of this type of thing so I can get back to 5. And 5 is that status quo: get up, go to work, do the job, go home, feed the kids, put them to bed, just keep life going is the best it can be. And as I was saying just before we broke up there, I would say to my clients, listen, you've been at 5. It wasn't working when you were there. Why
Right.
would you want me to get you back there? That does not seem like the work I should be doing for you, because you already know it doesn't make you happy. It doesn't really fulfill you. So, what I was challenging my clients is to create the other side of the continuum, a new side of the continuum. And in that process, they could begin to see themselves as a physical, emotional, thinking, sexual, and spiritual being. That's in that 6, 7, 8 level. And they're fully aware of what it means to be whole, something our culture doesn't teach us, but something we can learn. And that on this side of the continuum, we tend to be much more proactive. We're every experience that comes into our life, even if it's bad stuff, we're looking at how does that help me grow my wholeness. So it's a very different perspective. Both sides have problems, but on the 0 to 5 side, they're asking me to get rid of them. On the 6 to 10 side, we're saying, okay, how does that help me grow my wholeness? And so in that process, we seek to build what is back here on this. I'll show you the puzzle here in a minute. But on the 9, 10 level, or 8, 9, 10 level, we approach our life as an ongoing growing journey, that we're never finished, right? It's a daily lifestyle of preventing illness and living fully, and that challenges are accepted as a necessary part of becoming whole. So it's a very different way. And so I would ask people to think about, are you more 0 to 5, reactive, sort of unconscious, just doing status quo life? Or are you more 6 to 10, proactive, conscious, and really building a life that works for you, your family, your partner, all of that type of thing? When I would give these talks, Lawrence, sometimes I would do it just one-on-one with my clients, but I would also go out and do these talks on a bigger level and ask the audience, where are you? Are you 0 to 5 or 6 to 10? Which are you? And quite frankly, most people would say, oh my God, I'm 0 to 5. I wait till it's broke, then fix it, right? It's the American dieting industry, right?
Yeah.
Right? 5, we're at our ideal weight. 4, we put on 10 pounds. 2, we put on 20 pounds. 0, whatever the number is, oh my God, we have to go on a diet, right? And our goal is to just get back to 5. What is the success rate of this 0 to 5 reactive process of dieting? 10% of people will keep their weight off. 90% will keep this cycle going over and over and over. It's just a grand example of most of us live on that 0 to 5 side. And then I had to say to people, of course you do. Okay? Because that is the story we're taught.
Right.
Wait till it's broke, then fix it. It's our medical system, it's our business system, it's our government, right? On so many levels. This is what we as human beings kind of have learned. Wait till it's broke, then fix it, and rush in and create the crisis. I'm challenging, and that's part of what we're talking about, Lawrence, with an integrative economy, is
Yeah.
it is time for us to move to that 6 to 10 side and to begin building personal lives, families, communities that are much more conscious, proactive, and aware. Okay. And for my clients, they would say, yeah, this all sounds great, but what does that mean? When I get up in the morning, my feet hit the floor and I have to start my day. And initially, when I started doing this a long time ago, I just thought, well, people will figure that out, but they didn't. I had time to figure it out, and so that's why I created the practice that I did, was to really start showing people, what does this mean? But I want to, and you can take down the continuum at this point because people will see
Sure.
it later. Um, what I really want people to understand, we're talking today about building an integrative economy, and last week we talked about the 3 steps where we need to measure both for quantity of life and quality of life, right? Or quantity of stuff and quality of life, that we need to add a new work sector, right? That's about community and building quality human beings that know how to run their community. And then the third thing was that we'll need new wealth exchange systems. Those 3 things are built within all of this because, as you were saying earlier, Lawrence, 0 to 5 people create 0 to 5 systems. They create reactive systems, and that's what we see all around us right now. 6 to 10 people create different systems. They create systems that support life, personal and planetary life, and they build systems that are going to help their children grow into more wholeness. So that's kind of where we are. And I feel like, and we'll do this in the 3rd session, we will take what that means to become more whole and to build healthier humans as one of the new business models that we will implement in an integrative economy, which is really saying this work needs to be paid for. And this work is some of the most valuable work for the economy we're moving into. Because we've gone from just survival to thriving, but we have not literally taught people personally how to do that. Our thriving was on the first level. What was our thriving all about? Stuff.
Right.
Bigger houses, fancier cars, right? We don't have to roll down our windows anymore. We just hit a button, right? Everything was about more and more stuff. On this level, next level of an economy, it has to be about humans, quality of life. We need to spend time there. And I don't need to tell anybody in this audience, our schools are crumbling and we've sucked all the money out of them. Why? That's the stupidest thing we could have done, right?
Right.
Our social service systems, we spend billions of dollars to fix people after they're broke. True story. True story. When I went to school for my undergraduate degree in social work, about halfway through, I'm like, this is not working for me. So I raised my hand to my professor and said, I don't get this. Everything you are teaching me is how to fix people after they're broke. Why are you not teaching me how to help people not get broke in the first place?
Yeah.
This was 1974. Right? Wellness, holistic health, none of that was then happening. It is now, but it wasn't then. My professor, honest to God, she looked at me, Lawrence, and she said, oh, that's such a cute idea. That's such a... But then she said, we just don't have time yet. And there are so many people that we need to help that we don't have time to do that because we've got to sort of catch them and help them get restabilized. And I said, I get that there are people that are broke, but if we don't go upstream and figure out why these people keep getting broke and coming down the stream and falling off the cliff, we will always be at the bottom of the cliff catching them.
Right. Right.
Where are we today, Lawrence? Are we at the bottom of the cliff still catching them? Yes, we are.
We've got a comment from Neurodivergent Hodgepodge in the chat is saying, how to get not broke in the first place. Are you teaching the abused child not to be broken by their parents? Right? Like, it's a great point, where we need to look at the whole system and acknowledge where people are coming from. Like, how could you teach an abused child to be a healthy person if they're still living in the environment that is breaking them?
And then, I mean, it's that tricky thing, but then wouldn't we want to work with the parents? Because why are the parents abusing?
Right.
Because the parent themselves does not know how to build a healthy, whole, and dynamic life. They just don't. Is it because they're bad people and wanted to sit around and abuse their child? Absolutely not. It is because no one taught them. And that's the thing. And that's why we're spending time in this session looking at this. Humans have the longest childhood of any species on the planet. It is now at least 24 years old, might be 26, but at least 24 years. And what I mean by that is our bodies grow over those 24 years, but even more so, our brains and our personal development happens over those 24 years. And, I used to joke when I would teach this to teenagers, and, teenagers want to be done, right? They know everything.
Right.
Right. We've all been there. And I would say to my teenagers, okay, how tall are you? And somebody might say 5'6". I said, well, how tall were you when you were 4? And they go, I don't know, 3 feet tall. They would laugh, I don't know. I go, and I would look at them and say, okay, when you were 4 and you were 3 foot tall, but now you're 5'6", why did you not become 5'6" when you were 4? Like, you were going to become that. So why didn't you just do it when you were 4, for God's sakes? And they would step back and go, well, I'm not in charge of that. My bones grew, my body, I'm not in charge of that. And I would say to them, your brain is the same thing. Your brain is the same thing. A 4-year-old brain can't be a 25-year-old brain. It will take time and experiences to develop your brain so that by the time you're 24-ish, it should be able to manage its life and take full responsibility. But we don't expect 4-year-olds to have the brain of a 25 or a 30-year-old and run their lives, do we? Human beings have the longest childhood of any species on the planet, right? 24 hours after a salamander is born, it knows exactly how to be a salamander. And 24 hours after a human is born, it knows nothing about how to be a human. It knows how to cry, poop, and hope that mom gives it some breast milk.
Right.
Or it's going to die. Yeah. So anyway, so that's why I'm saying, if we're going to create this next economy, one of the steps we're going to have to take in this first phase of shift is refocusing on recognizing that human development is at the cornerstone of this economy, that we need all children and all of us as humans building whole and dynamic lives. And the only way that's going to happen is if we create businesses or create it in a way that our entire culture is saying this is part of the way we manage our lives. And so, so going back to the continuum, what does that 6 to 10 mean, right? When we get out of bed in the morning. And initially in my early phases, I just said, my clients and I will talk that out. But I've finally realized, no, we're not going to be able to talk that. I'm going to need to develop a frame. And so that's what people see here. And if you want to pop this up, I'll use this in a little bit. Go to there you go. This is what I call the life puzzle, guys. And basically, this is what it takes if you're going to own your own life to learn all this information. Okay. And I always say that everyone on the planet, this is a universal model. Every single one of us have the same 16 core areas, 5 edges that create the self. And as we grow from birth to about 24, we should be building and learning in all of these pieces so we can walk into adulthood and really own our lives and take responsibility for this. This is a self-responsibility model. You may not have been taught, but you can teach yourself. But we're at a phase in the human journey where all of us really need to be learning this at the same time. Because right now, a very small portion of the population learn this, but anybody can learn this. And so in the process of this, I want to kind of go through these 16 core areas, and then we'll look in a minute around the edges of the self. But these 16 core areas develop both for me because of my own journey and my client's journey. As I said last week, I started my journey into wholeness through the door of nutrition. I was a junk food junkie. I used to eat at McDonald's at least 5 times a week. Big Mac, Coke, and fries was my favoriteest meal. And at the end of the height of my junk food eating, I was 5'6" and weighed 100 pounds because I'm one of these truly obnoxious people that have a very fast metabolism. And I can eat and eat and eat and don't put on weight. But as my friend said to me one day, Anne, honest to God, if you ate better, you'd feel better. Because while I weighed only 100 pounds at that time, I was sick constantly, headaches all the time, intestinal problems, and used to go to bed for 3 days in a dark room with depression every month. I was on this roller coaster cycle. And she said, you need to eat better. And I'm like, what? I weigh 100 pounds. People give their eye teeth to eat like this. She goes, I'm just saying. So to humor a friend, I started changing my diet. And after a year, all my headaches went away. My intestinal problems cleared up because I wasn't eating 5 Big Macs a week. And I started to feel better. And as I came out of that fog, at first I got really mad at McDonald's. Like, how could they feed me this crap? And then what? I had to come back to the responsibility piece and say, wait, they did not make me go through the drive-through line twice a day. I did that. I did that. So as I came out of that fog, and then I said, okay, I have 16 years of schooling and I don't know how to feed myself. How did that happen? Right? That's ridiculous. Right? Does anybody in our audience, any of you don't eat? Right? Everybody has to eat. And yet we have 12 to 16 years of schooling, and most of us walk out of our schooling and have no idea how to feed ourselves. That's tragic, right? And we can see its impact on this culture because we're eating such junk, our health is just tanking. But then I asked the other question, okay, what else did I need to know as a human if I was actually going to own my life, that I could take responsibility and build it the way I want? And that's what started me on a 10-year journey, honestly, guys, to build what would become the life puzzle. And so, oops, sorry about the dog. So what's happening here is I started thinking about other things I would need in my life. Okay, so exercise. Do most of us learn how to exercise for a lifetime? No, we do not, right? Only 20% of Americans exercise. And yet, if you want to solve the healthcare crisis in America, boom, right there, nutrition and exercise pieces. If you take responsibility for them, you would change so much in your life. And yet we do not teach that to children growing up in our culture.
Yeah. And can I ask a question?
Yes.
So Naida Green is in the chat. Hi, Naida. And she's asking about accessibility, where accessibility falls into the chart.
Accessibility? I'm not sure what she means by that.
So thinking about people who have different developmental or physical needs, who, so this month is Disability Awareness Month, and just kind of taking that into account with regard to what you're talking about here.
Yes. So within the life puzzle, the piece down on the lower right, if they can see it, is the special challenges. Okay. Special challenges is the recognition that many of us have either a disability or I call it special challenge. You can call it a disability or whatever that we have to tune into, right? We have to take responsibility for, but we also recognize in ourselves and in others that many of us will have something unique within ourselves that is going to have to be focused in on that other people don't have to focus in on. And so for someone with a disability, you know, for some people, that's like, oh, I can't have a whole life because I have a disability. And what I'm saying is, no, it's just a piece of the puzzle.
Right. And just one more clarifying question,
Yeah.
Anne. So I think it's striking me that the colors on the outside of the wheel don't necessarily map to the inner piece of the
They
pie.
do not.
Okay, we're just saying there are these like 5 big areas, and then we're talking about all the sub areas. You're not supposed to
Yes.
necessarily be like special challenges under sexual necessarily.
No, those are the white pieces just had to be put on the board somewhere because there's so
Yeah.
many of them. When I'm done going through these white pieces, I'm going to go into the colored pieces and the self, and you'll see what that's all about. It's slightly different from the whole thing. But just real quick, I want to go through these 16 core areas and just ask you as an audience member, were you really taught how to develop this area of your life so that you can be proactive and take responsibility for forming it in your life? So, we already know nutrition and exercise most of us didn't get. Were most of us taught how to manage feelings? No,
Right.
that's a
Nope.
big gap, right? We fighting about empathy or not empathy. It's ridiculous. Were most of us taught how to be great thinkers? The reality is no, our schools actually teach us to be 0 to 5, stay within the line thinkers, not critical thinkers, creative thinkers, and that type of thing. And all of us can think back on a time in school where we got our knuckles rapped because we tried to think outside the box. And so thinking is sort of for a lot of people an empty space. Were we taught to be good at communication? No, we were not. Okay. And and then there's 2 parts of that. So there's the communication, I'm communicating to people right now, but the even more important part of this piece is communication within yourself. Do you have an inner talk, an inner communication that's proactive, 6 to 10, or is it 0 to 5? I would guarantee you that 95% of the people in this audience have a 0 to 5 self-talk, because no one teaches us. That's something you have to actually teach a child, is positive self-talk. And we don't do a very good job at that. Moving on, were we taught how to have partnerships and relationships? No. And yet most of us will do that, won't we?
Yep.
Most of us will do that. Were we taught how to build families? Were we taught how to raise children? No, right? And someone was saying that, and how is an abused child going to make it into wholeness if their parents are abusing them? But if you really stop and ask, the parents probably also came from very abusive. We pass on what we learn, right? We didn't learn wholeness, we learned abuse, we learned fear. And so I'm trying to change that by bringing to the forefront a model that says you may not have been taught, but you can teach yourself. And that's what's really key here. Community and environment is another piece. Were we really taught to be good community members? The loneliness epidemic alone will tell you that is a missing piece. And then the environment, we're in climate change. Nope, a missing piece. Sexuality, raise your hand, everybody in the audience, when you sat down with your parents and had a wonderful conversation about what sex was going to be in your life. Right? Yeah, I don't even have to see the audience because nobody raised their hands. Right? And yet, who did not have puberty? Right? So you can see what it means to be a whole human being. By the time you leave high school, no one's taught you. Financial responsibility. How many here knew how to manage money for a lifetime after they left high school or college? Maybe 5%. Most of us don't know anything about this. The only piece of the puzzle we knew we had to do was work, right? What are you going to be when you grow up? What are you going to be? What are you going to be? What are you going to be? But all the other pieces were missing. Play and recreation is another piece. Special challenge is a piece. That's what I was saying, that within your own life, something that makes you unique or has been a challenge that you could say it stops my potential for being whole, but instead you realize it's just a piece of who I am. No matter whether it's a trauma, even child abuse is a special challenge in that, yes, that may have happened to you. I grew up with abuse, but it doesn't mean that stops your life. You're going to have to heal it and work through that, right? And move through that. And then spirituality is living life with love for all. I don't do religion, I just living life for love for all. And then finding meaning is living life in relationship to death. Okay, that the bottom line is no one here gets out alive. We're all going to die. You can sit on your butt and do nothing. You can work your tail off and do something. But at the end of it, you're going to die. So what I'm asking my clients early on is let's find our meaning. And in some ways, finding meaning is putting the other 15 pieces together. Proactively eating, right? Exercising for the rest of your life, learning how to manage your feelings. All of these things become a part of the whole. And that's the other thing to think about. I'm going to have you take that down and I'm going to work on the board a little bit.
Sure.
Okay. And I don't know how much, hopefully people, when they see this on recording, like on their computer, if they,
I'm going to try to feature you, Anne. I'm going to try to make you the big piece so that people can see you more.
Okay. And I know this is flipped backwards, guys, but as I was saying before, these 16 core areas are what we do after we kind of go through our childhood. All righty. But one of the key concepts I need people to understand is every piece impacts the whole. So remember, I started by saying that my nutrition piece was awful, right? I was a junk food junkie. And what that ended up doing for me, let me see if I make that a little bit bigger there and bring this in a little bit more. There we go. So what happened when I was eating poorly, right? I was depressed. So my feeling area was also impacted. So I was depressed, that it made a hole in that piece. When I was depressed, my thinking piece was not as effective because I was depressed. And so the choices and the creativity was kind of eliminated. And so that would also maybe impact how I was communicating to my coworkers or my partner or whatever. So I want people to understand that whenever you build in any one piece, like when I started eating better, it impacted my feelings and improved it. When I was eating poorly, it kind of made it difficult for me to feel well. Every piece impacts the whole. As you grow in one area, it grows the whole. As if you're missing one area, it's going to impact the whole. So I want people to realize that even though at certain times you'll work on one area more than another, in terms of wholeness, you really want to keep in context every piece because they all work together. So that's those are the 16 core areas that all of us need to learn about. But long before we get there, and that's what these outer pieces are. Don't want to lose my puzzle there. There we go. These pieces on the outside are what we start with. And this is the formation of self. And this is where I spend a lot of times with my clients. I'm trying to get these guys off real quick. So at birth, what I'm teaching people, and this is going to be crucial in the work that we're talking about in an integrative economy, because all of our businesses need, or people need to understand how crucial human development is in this day and age. We live to 100 years and we really need to know how to manage life. You know, when we were coming out of the caves, we lived to about 20, 25. We didn't have to spend a lot of time on this. But now, in the world that we're in, going to live 100 years, we really need to make sure human development is done at the highest level for every child on the planet. So one of the things I realized when I first made the puzzle is that I didn't have these outer edges, right? But what's the first thing you do when you make a puzzle, right? You put down the edges. Why? Because once the edges are formed, the inner pieces are protected to stay together. Well, the same thing is true with humans, okay? That we need to form a self. At birth, you don't have a self. You have the potential for self, but you don't have one. These 5 outer edges are what human beings developed from birth to about age 24, right? A physical edge, an emotional edge, a thinking edge, a sexual edge, and a spiritual edge. And as these 5 edges come together, we form a self. But if these edges don't come together, if they're open, right, anything can come through and shape us the way it wants to. And that's kind of where we are right now. Many, many people walk into adulthood without healthy boundaries of, or edges of self. And so the outside world comes through and shapes them. What we're trying to do in, or what I'm trying to say in an integrative economy is we need to make sure we help all of our children build strong outer edges so that they can form a strong self, because that's how we take responsibility. Now, I think every human being wants that, but a child does not know how to form these edges without good guidance. And the belief that they'll just figure it out for themselves is what many people thought for a long time. We'll just, they'll get to a certain point and they'll figure it out. But we don't. I can tell you, as a counselor for 30 years, most of my clients were in their 30s and 40s, and they were coming back into my office, and we were spending our time building edges and forming a self because no one had really taught them. And it's not, anybody can learn this, but you can't figure it out by as a 12-year-old. You have to be shown how to form these edges. So these edges are put on the puzzle in the ways that human beings will develop them. Okay. We start with the physical edge, we move to the emotional, thinking, sexual, and spiritual. And it correlates with our human development of our bodies and our minds. We'll start with the first edge real quick. I don't know that we have a whole bunch of time to do all 5 of them. We won't. But I just want you to get the feeling for what it means to form an edge and how that impacts self. Maybe we'll get the first 2 done. Physical edge, we start forming around age 2. Okay. And in that process, we begin to push back, right? The favorite word of a 2-year-old is no, no, mommy, no, I don't want to, I don't want to. Right. And that's really cute and charming. And mom picks baby up anyway and does what they're going to do. But for the first, 6 months of a baby's life, it is 100% dependent on the mother. It doesn't crawl, it doesn't walk, it doesn't do anything, mother and father, right? But little by little by little, they're going to build this edge and separate themselves out. And by the time we complete this edge, ideally around age 16, we would know 2 primary things. My body is my body. No one has the right to touch my body unless I give permission. And vice versa. I don't have the right to touch anyone else unless they give permission. And I know to love, honor, nurture, and care for my body for a lifetime. Now think about that. Do most of us, by the time we're 16, really complete that edge? Right? And the reality is no. I mean, there's somebody asked about abuse earlier. I mean, there's so much physical abuse in our culture, and we sort of set up that belief that we're at the mercy of, and a child is constantly at the mercy of those who are bigger than them. And so if you don't learn that my body is my body, if you grew up in an abusive home, right, that partner or somebody will come through and shape you how they want to. I've done domestic violent groups and talked to them, and it's really amazing to them. The women who are often abused, and it's about 95% are women are abused, and 10% or about 5% of men are abused. But they'll often think that the man who is abusing them is strong and powerful. And yet I will say to them, actually, no. He has as a missing physical edge too, because he doesn't know that he doesn't have the right to touch anyone unless they give permission. And so his self is not formed. And many people, when they abused women, when they see that, are just in shock that they think because he's physically powerful, he knows what he's doing. No, he's telling the world he has an unformed self. And the thing that's really kind of interesting is we help women, right? When they're in domestic violent relationships, we get them out, and we do start helping them form edges and build a self. What do we do for the man? We either send him to jail or we just kick him out of the house and say, don't do that again. But what we're not recognizing is that man grew up in, most likely, a home where that's what he saw as normal. So he's doing what is normal. And we have to change that and teach them that their lack of self isn't filled in by the power of the punch, but we need to teach them how to form that self too. And we could spend a whole hour just on that. But it also correlates. I mean, all of these edges come together. We start forming the emotional edge at around age 7. Are we emotional before 7? Absolutely, we're emotional long before 7, right? But the reason we don't start forming the emotional edge until around age 7 is because our brains have not developed enough so it can manage emotion. And that's what the emotional edge is about. By the time you're about 25, you should be able to know what you're feeling at any moment. I'm mad, I'm sad, I'm glad, I'm angry. Okay. Mad, sad, glad, or fear. I'm afraid. I've got that one wrong. Mad, sad, glad, or fear. That I know what I'm feeling, and myself is managing the feeling instead of the feeling managing me. That's all it is. That the self is managing the feeling instead of the feeling managing me. But for many adults, they walk into adulthood and they don't know how to manage their feeling. And the world comes through and shapes them, you know. And we have created a world where we unfortunately, we kind of like it when people don't have well-formed edges because the outside world can come in and shape us, right? That's what reality TV is. That's what advertising is. It comes through, it hits our emotions of inadequacy, fear that we're not good enough, and we go buy a product. All of these things are part of, if we were healthier with our boundaries and stronger with ourselves, we would know how to make better choices, take responsibility, build our lives, and then build our communities. And that's what I'm trying to get at here is we have a world that needs this human development. This is like the product that is most important for the next 100 years is what? Humans. I know we're not a product, but we have not recognized the incredible need to have highly formed humans. And if we're going to create the next economy, it's going to need well-boundaried or well-edged humans with a strong self that can take responsibility for their lives, for building healthier families, for building a community. Lawrence, if you want to kind of pop back in, I'm not sure where you're at on this at this point, but I think it's really, that's what I'm trying to get people to understand. And you saw this, are there any questions and that type of thing as we're talking about this? I want to kind of check in.
You've gotten a lot of really great feedback from the chat, people who are appreciating the conversation and like your framework and the way that you're presenting it. So yeah, keep trucking, and you're getting some great response here.
So, you know, as we build an integrative economy, we're going to realize that, right? Technology is making it easier and easier for us not to have to go to work to regular jobs. But one job that technology will never take the place of is human development. I don't want a machine raising my child. I want a human being raising my child. And so we're in that transitional phase that the adults that are now available on the planet don't know this for themselves. And so they can't pass that on to their kids, right? That is going to be, to me, one of the largest businesses where we create what I call human capacity development professionals that work in their homes and their communities with each other, supporting themselves as adults with other adults, building wholeness, and then setting up their communities to help their children learn this over the course of a lifetime. And right now, it's every man for himself, right? And I mean, what we do in terms of child support in this country, zero. Basically zero, right?
Yeah.
It's expensive. It's not necessarily even good. A lot of us will leave our kids with somebody who was going to take care of 3 or 4 or 5. And maybe that person is really good at what they're doing. But in a lot of cases, we're just dropping kids off so we can go to work, so we can pay the bills to put the diapers on them and feed them. You know, it's that rat racy kind of thing. That has to change in this next economy. And I know people are kind of like amazed when I say that, but there's no reason for us not to do that.
Right.
You know, and go ahead. You're going to ask a question.
Well, not a question. I'm just, you know, I think in this moment it's really connecting for me that last week you were talking about the nonprofit sector and how that's growing and how much opportunity there is there. And this week, I think part of what you're doing is explaining to people how much work there is available and to do in
Yes.
that part of the economy that traditionally, let's face it, has fallen as woman's work,
Mhm.
and unpaid, and therefore unpaid, and like the role of being a mother and nurturing and developing whole humans. And so in a lot of ways, this is a big reset in acknowledging that
The
maybe
reset.
the most important work of our human lives is to build better humans.
Yes, yes. And here's the thing to think about, right? We talked last week too about the changing economy. We went from agriculture to industrial, industrial to knowledge, and now I'm suggesting we go from knowledge to integrative. Okay.
Right.
And in each of those economies, our focus of what was important to us was different. And now we're at that level of recognizing, okay, the industrial quantity of stuff world brought us out of poverty and that type of thing, and brought us into more knowledge, and now we're ready to take that next step. To me, this is just a logic that makes sense, that this is what, why would we create an economy if the humans in it aren't enjoying it, are not part of it? And yet I know the tech brothers are like, no, we'll unemploy everybody, they'll sit and drool at their houses and do nothing,
Right.
right, and we'll be rich. No sane human being would create a system like that. I hate to tell you this, but I could go through like Elon Musk's outer edges and tell you he does not have a well-formed self.
Right.
You
Right.
know, we
Right. And the tech bros who are rushing forward to build AI, and who talk about the survival of humanity as optional are
are
fundamentally
ridiculous.
anti-human.
Yes, yes, and nobody taught them wholeness, right? And that's the thing, right? We're really recognizing. I'm going to put out an article later today about hierarchy. We live in a world with a meme that is so unseen that we all live it and accept it as normal, and yet it has taken us to the brink of collapse. And that meme is hierarchy, right?
Yeah.
We
And
all
you're using meme in kind of its original term here as an idea or a concept that gets transmitted from person to person like a
person,
virus,
yes,
and that
yes,
becomes sort of so ingrained that you don't realize you're soaking in it, like the old
yeah,
Palmolive ad.
yes, absolutely. And it's so pervasive that we don't even think about it. We may not like it, but it is normed in our culture. And even in the article that I was writing, I was talking about some of these businesses, right? Where, like, when you look at American tobacco, right? And they got caught basically knowing that their product killed people, and then they hid all that data. Why did they do that? Because of hierarchy, because they knew if they admitted it, their company would collapse, everybody would lose their jobs, they'd lose their status. And so people convinced themselves they had to keep the story going, and they couldn't bust that. And that's such a lose lose proposition. But in a hierarchy world, you have literally heard people say, I know this sucks. I know this is bad. I know this is wrong. But if I don't do it, someone else will. So it may as well be me, because this is the game, right? This is the game we're all in. Well, what technology and the knowledge economy and AI is sort of saying is that game is changing people. And if you're going to survive this game, you're going to survive it by having healthy boundaries, strong self that takes responsibility for not only creating your life, but creating the world that we want to live in. And I think the US is in the very best position in so many ways to be a leader in transitioning the world to do this. But we've got to start at a base level right now. Most Americans don't know how to do this. We need to create nonprofit businesses that work in their homes and in the community to transform this. And that's going to be the solution. On top of that, I'm going to say this really in a horrible way. We were talking about this earlier. We're on the edge of what, like in 1929, right, of a collapse. And if you've read Sorkin's book on 1929, right up until the day everything absolutely collapsed, the powers that be, the guys at the top, were so sure nothing was going to happen. There's no way the system could break. They had fixed it. They were in charge of it. Boom, it came down. And then it came down and they were in such shock. We went into this Great Depression for the next 4 or 5 years at least. We're about to do the same thing.
Right.
Okay. But here's what I'm saying to everybody to think about. Even if we do have a financial collapse, because this AI bubble is going to burst. Your last article, Lawrence, was, oh my God, it's going to collapse. But we are not going to be a victim this time to the powers that be. We can build an integrative economy in our communities, even if everything else is going to hell in a handbasket. Because if we do those three things, measure quantity of stuff and quality of life, transform, if we're willing to say we're going to create this new work sector of the stuff that helps human development and takes care of the environment, and if we create on the third level new financial ways of exchange, we can build from the bottom up in our communities and survive a collapse if we take charge of our lives, our families, our community. And so that's the other reason why I'm really excited to push this idea, is that if you kind of learn more about this, and we'll be doing more next week about how we could set this up structurally in our communities.
Right.
I am seeding of, if there's a collapse, this is what you could do. If there isn't a collapse, fabulous. Let's do it even more so.
Right. Yeah. And one of the things I really appreciate about your concept is that you're focusing on community as the logical next step. And I think with so many of the issues that we are confronting, you know, when I talk to people about politics and the political challenges we're currently facing, I think everyone recognizes that the answer comes back to community, you know, talking with your local community and operating at the community level. And so I feel like this is just part and parcel of the restructure of society that we need to do from the ground up. It needs to be more community
and environment. Yeah. You know, people often ask me when I'm working with them one-on-one, what's the most important piece of the puzzle? And I will say to them, there's no most important piece. Because they're all integrated, right? This is where our integrative economy comes from. So all of these are integrated if you're going to have a truly vibrant life. But then I will say to them, but if you ask me my most favorite piece in the puzzle, it is community and environment. Because we need to recognize that even if I put together a great life, but I live in a community of 0 to 5ers, I'm not going to have a great life. Right? If I build my puzzle on the 6 to 10, and I encourage others in the community to build theirs on 6 to 10, I'm creating a community that's going to be far more dynamic and wonderful to grow into. And at the same time, I always include the environment, because we cannot separate ourselves out, right, from the environment. If we don't take care of that part of our community, right, we are integrated with the environment. When it collapses, we're goners. So we have to build on both sides of that. And so as I could spend 2 hours just going through every piece of the puzzle here. That's not what this session's about. I'm just trying to get people to understand. We don't live in a world that teaches people how to build whole and dynamic lives. A few people get it because they're lucky, but most of us don't. We need to change that, and creating an integrative economy sets that up for us for a lifetime. And I think it's a wonderful way to go.
We're coming up on the top of the hour, and I just want to reinforce to the chat, to the audience, that you know, Ann and I are doing this sort of 4-week special series. This was week number 2. We've got 2 more to go, but we're not done after that. We kind of wanted to do this 4-week sort of starter course. To see how many people were interested in continuing this conversation. And so if you're interested in what Ann was talking about today, and you're interested in bigger conversations about rethinking the economy and building an integrative economy, please be sure to subscribe to both of us. I will, you know, make sure that all of the content gets posted. All of the images and graphics that Ann is using we'll have in the write-up for today. But we're also putting together a website where people can sign up. And what we're looking to do is find people who are willing to raise their hands to maybe be, you know, the first cohort of people that Ann can teach this concept to, so that we can start taking it out into our actual lived communities and start implementing some of these ideas. So please hit subscribe and sign up, because we hope to do more if people are interested in joining us.
These are such changing times, Lawrence, and all of it. I will say, in gratefulness for Substack and some of these new media platforms, Luant Media, that type of thing, our ability to get out to people all over this country in little tiny corners of Ohio or what, and talk about this, to me is what's so exciting, because there's a template that I have that I would give away to any community to say, here's how you can get this started. It's not rocket science. Anybody can learn how to do it. We just have to take the step over into the 6 to 10 world, right?
Right.
That wholeness is what we want for the future, not the reactive, unconscious, wait till it's broke and fix it world. We're done with that, folks. It's something we can do better. We can. And it doesn't matter if you're rich or poor, highly educated. All of us can learn wholeness. It doesn't matter. We can all learn wholeness and transform our communities and do it. Okay.
Yeah. And I know we've only got a minute or two left, but as you were talking about 1929, I was thinking about how, one of the patterns that I've observed, I think many people here are pattern observers and pattern matchers. And one of the patterns I've observed over my 56 years is how often something is accepted as common knowledge and sort of told to us by the intelligentsia that it is just the way things are, until it changes, right? Mm-hmm. Until the moment that it collapses and we have to rethink everything. And it feels like, I think all of us are sensing that it feels like we are coming up on another moment like that. And the difference this time is that we have each other, we can communicate like this. Mm-hmm. We can be spread all over, the face of God's green earth, because, there are 167 people here, plus you and me, and I'm in Ohio right now. You're in California someplace. We have the ability to communicate and share these ideas in a way that, the folks in 1929 sure didn't have the chance to do that.
They did not. That's right.
So,
and hierarchy has had its day. It is a failed beam, is what I call it, a failed meme. And wholeness is where we're heading. It is a much better way for us on a personal, family, community, and environmental level. And I'm looking forward to continuing to work with everybody to make this happen. So thanks, everybody, for being here today. If you know other people who want it, when the recording comes out, please share it with them and spread it like wildfire. And
And to that point, we'll make sure that the recording gets published today as quickly as possible. And like Ann said, thank you so much for being here. We'll be back here next Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. And thanks again for being here. And thank you, Ann, for inspiring everybody.
Thanks for being here, everybody. Have a great day.
All right. Take care. Bye, everyone. Thank you.